session is we kind of just got it. We are all being recorded. Is Sam, I'd love for you to just introduce yourself to, whoever's here, and then also whoever's watching this after the fact. And then we can just kind of talk through our experiences around work and being a mother. And then, Vicky and Yelena, this is kind of like an inclusive conversation space. So then we just kind of all talk through what you guys are going through as well. So Sam, why don't you tell us a little bit about who you are, and we'll go from there.
That feels like a very loaded question right now, but in a good way. So I live in St. Louis, and I have 3 boys, Rowan, Maddox, and Isaac, 1, 3, and 5. And I do Instagram stuff, and then I work part-time at a local jewelry shop and kind of just maxing out doing what I can. I've been totally on my own with them, supporting them fully since last August, going through a divorce. Just sometimes it's, minute by minute, sometimes day by day. Never a dull moment. I love motherhood so much. I feel like it's the most at home I've ever felt. Yet at the same time, it really pushes you to discover yourself in new ways. And that's been really amazing, just to go through life, because you never know what's coming. And I'm so grateful to have the support system that I do, both in person and the amazing people I've met online. And like being able to do stuff like this is just really incredible and helpful for other people. So yeah, I don't know if that's I don't know how to say about me.
That was perfect.
A little bit, but yeah. So here we are.
Yeah. Well, and you have, how old are your children?
1, 3, and 5.
1, 3, and 5. And where are they right now?
They are at my friend's. So I'm in Florida. Isaac's spring break, he's in kindergarten. So we drove down, and I got, us a little rental property. And then my friends, I lived with her when I was pregnant with Rowan after I first filed for divorce. And me and Isaac shared a bed, and Maddox was in the crib, and I was pregnant with Rowan. She kind of took me in for a couple months because she also is a single mom of 3 kids. And she was such a mentor for me, and has been so just the things you can learn from someone who has, our lives are very different, but coming from an abusive relationship and stuff like that, it's really, really special to have those people, especially when you can cohabitate with someone, like when you can, as an adult and with kids. And her kids are older, but then it was helpful for her to be working, and this was during the pandemic, right in the beginning and in the middle. And so her kids are older, and I was sort of a older sister for them. So anyways, so she's down here with her family at the same time, and she had already booked her place, and then I decided to come, and they're 5 minutes down the street. So we go over there for dinners and stuff when we're home. And so now it worked out well, because of course, them being as generous as they are, they're like, come when you need extra hands. Yeah. So my kids are there right now.
Nice. And the reason I asked that is because, I think currently with the whole pandemic situation, and just on the topic of where do your kids go when you work? And I think that has been such a juggle, even, and something that, I know, Vicky, you mentioned you don't have kids. Something that I wish somebody had warned me about before I had kids was that even if you're kind of like, okay, great, even if you make the decision to put your kids in care, well, you need to put your kids in care, so kindergarten or daycare or whatever that may be, you still need kind of a full-time parent on call, because one of them will be sick, or one of them will there's always something, right? And so I wish somebody had kind of said to me, well, just because your kids are in care, there are going to be so many variables that you can't control.
Yeah. Or like you're up all night with one of them.
Yeah. And I mean, even just getting them into care, there's that 6-month period where they get free bug like in the birth. And so there's that as well. So Sam, your experience then with work, and I'm just going to change my view here, that's better, and deciding to go back to work. What was that like for you, I guess, when you had your first?
Well, so I didn't work.
Okay.
I was at home with Isaac and Maddox and 3 dogs at the time. I was a nanny. I did 3 years of college, met my ex, we got together, and then got married, had Isaac, or I was a nanny after college briefly in between, and then had Isaac and Maddox, and then Rowan. And then I had started to do Instagram. It was a food account when I started it, and now it's much more lifestyle and writing, but obviously, which is so much more fun and I feel like rewarding. Not that food isn't amazing and relatable to everyone, but I feel like this is the kind of stuff that is people like need and crave, and hearing your perspective is really can be so helpful. But so I got pregnant with Rowan, and then things kind of unfolded the way they did, and I filed for divorce. And then at that time I had built up Instagram to be making more, but I wasn't making enough to live off of it at all. And so my friend put me in touch with this management company, and they upped my partnerships and just, got things lined up for me. And so then I was able to go, okay, I'm going to make this for this and this for this. And then the jewelry shop that I had shopped at for years, I reached out to her, and she needed someone full-time, but was like, I'll take you when I can get you. And so then I arranged for my mom to come on Thursdays and Fridays to watch the younger 2 while Isaac's in kindergarten, all week. And then I have the little 2 Monday through Wednesday, and then I'm gone Thursday, Friday to work. And I don't have my kids on the weekends, so I can always count on Saturday to work. And I was just at the time, still, I just do what I can. So that was definitely such a shift.
Yeah.
I actually just wrote something about this, about how I used to be at home and be like, I can't even imagine paying for all this. Granted, like, I don't have a house, I have an apartment, but just like being a stay-at-home mom, I don't know how to word this properly. Do you know what I'm saying? Like, just coming from a place where I did not make any of my own money.
Yeah.
And then being like, oh, I have to do this now. So.
And I think that it's like your situation is nuanced, and I've been there before. I was a single mom when I had my first child. But even if you are not in, I guess, a more compromised position like that, for a lot of women, and this is myself included right now, I've got a partner and all of that, and so I have help, but there's still an expectation where women now need to be both. We need to make the money and raise the kids. And I know that's very different depending on what households you're in. But for a lot of friends who I speak with who don't have, who aren't able to live off one income. And so as the mother, you're also contributing financially, which is totally fine and fair, but there's not an expectation for equal parenting, what I found. And I guess for you, Sam, being a single mother, that pressure of having to do both things all the time. And also as a writer, I wanted to ask you this, you know, being a writer, you need to be able to access that creative part of your brain and be able to find time to think straight and then express yourself, express those thoughts. Something I've really struggled with going from 1 to 2. I can't even find time to think.
Yeah.
I don't know, like, how do you do that? How do you do that?
I don't know how to explain it. It's just like a thought hits me and I have to write it down right away. And it's only if I'm on a walk, sometimes with the kids, but like when I'm with, you know, the kids, I have to have my headphones in, like I have to have music. But usually I'll have one in if I have Maddox and Rowan and we go to the park, you know, we do like our long walk and he's scootering, but I still have to be like alert, and Maddox is asking me questions and he's, look at this and let's go here and let's do that. So it's more chopped up. But walks, so movement in the car, I'll get something in the car and I'll pull the car over and the kids will get, like, Isaac knows at this point. I'll be like, I have to write something down. And he's like, oh God, this is going to be like 5 minutes. But I'm like, I have to, because once it's gone, it's gone.
Yeah.
And then sometimes like in the shower when it's quiet for like 30 seconds, but when I'm home showering with the kids or when I'm taking a shower at home, I leave the door open because I have to be able to hear what's going on. So that's rare, but it's so random. And yes, when I'm like burnt out, tired, uninspired, down, divorce stuff is crazy and it's really consuming me, and it's very, very hard to like tune into that or even have, it's really not, I don't know, for me, it's like having that energy that's open. Like you almost have to be, it's not like, I could never be like, oh, I have to write something unless it's an article where you guys have, given me direction for that. And then I have time to think about it. But I think it's not about, it's not about channeling something. It's about being open. If I'm making sense, just like having that energy open, having your mind open in order to absorb or like get stuff. Because if you're so like, when I'm really, really down, I'm fixating on 10 things. So I'm not able to like get those thoughts, but like when you keep it light or you kind of, I don't know, I should be better at like meditating or stuff like that. But I've noticed that on the days when I wake up and I'm intentionally like, okay, I'm going to do this, this, and this, and I'm not going to be anxious about this, and I'm going to take the kids on a walk and then I'm going to do this. And then I think that way feels like less pressure. And that's just, I'm saying for like a bad day or a bad week. Because you can't let that like consume you.
Well, that's the lesson, right? It's learning how to not be entirely consumed by, I was going to say your children, but it's everything, right? But I think that lends itself well to that idea of, as a mother, you are often so entirely consumed with your kids, subconsciously even, you're on a certain frequency where their needs become a reflex, as opposed to a choice.
On all the time.
You're on all the time.
Yeah. But I also think,
you
go ahead.
No, go for it.
No, I was thinking about this recently about how in those moments, I'm like, there has to be some sort of balance, or that is the trick to not letting that, not letting it be consumed. But I also think that the response to that is accepting that that's normal to be consumed sometimes. And then once you accept that, then you can release it and be like, okay, I'm ready for the next, like this is temporary. This cannot.
I relate to that a lot. I stayed home with my kids when they were younger, and you get to the point where you're like, oh, this is my job, is to be a mom. And so my job is to do all of these things, and you don't really think about what you need to do because there's no boundaries. I can't tell my kids like, oh, I'm not going to mom you right now. Like it's hard to do that. So I would do, when they got a little bit older, I started writing like sticker charts for myself. And like on the wall, I would say, these are the things I need to do for me to survive a day. And they like simple things, go for a walk, like remember to eat food, you know, whatever it is, so that like you can get things done. And things, you know, with my kids too, I'm like, I have to stop, I have to write this down, because if I don't write it down, I'm not going to remember it, because there's just too much shit going on in my head. So I absolutely relate to what you're saying, Sam, about just trying to find time to like allow yourself to be open to yourself and not just the little humans controlling your life around you.
Yeah.
I think that's a really interesting way. That's so smart, a sticker chart for yourself. Raz just getting to the age now, he's just turned 4, where sticker charts are starting to kind of make sense. But I think that, you know, somebody asked me once, what do you find the hardest about going from 1 to 2? And I know we're all at, you know, different childbearing stages here, but I was really thought about it. And I was like, it's interesting because the baby's easier. Like it's, you know, what you're doing that time, you know, and Raz a little bit older. So she's easier to take care of. He's at a good age, but what I had found the toughest was that there was no time to take care of myself. So with 1, once you get into the swing of it, you're kind of like, okay, cool. Like I can, once he's in childcare, then I've got like a full day, or like once he's got his breakfast, and that's good. Like the learning curve at the beginning was really, really steep. But then after a few months, you start to get into the swing of that. And then you can I thought I kind of had things on lock. And then with number 2, I was like, oh my God, looking after myself became so hard.
Yeah.
What has everybody found? I'm very curious about the whole work thing. And I know that, Sam, with you, it's slightly different. You're doing things entirely on your own. And I just am in complete awe of you. And feel free, anybody else, to jump into this. I know that Yelena, you mentioned, you know, Basil's only 9 weeks old, but you've been doing a little bit of work. You know, is that when we've all decided to go back to work as mothers, was that self-induced? You know, for me personally, when Riley was 6 weeks old, I was like, she probably was a little bit premature because she was still in that like really sleepy newborn phase. And I was like, this is easy, I'm going to go back to work. And then she like woke up, and I was like, oh, okay, good one, Amy. But Yelena, you're here, you turn on your camera. Thank you.
Hi.
Love to see it. No, and no pressure, but I'm so curious, you know, what has and you also, I'd love if you're comfortable to share your situation, because I know that you also have a modern family.
Sure.
Yeah. So tell it, how are you doing? The last time I saw you, you were heavily pregnant, walking down the street.
Yeah, I'm doing well, I guess. So my situation is that I have 2 older boys. They're 10 and 11. And I went through a divorce when they were 4 and 5, which was really difficult at the time. I did spend a lot of time at home with them. So I was more of a stay-at-home mum with the older boys. Fell in love again, and my new partner, he hadn't had any children. So it was a big conversation for us around like, were we going to have another one and add to our family? And we decided that is what we wanted to do. And I think I totally forgot about how labor intensive new babies are, and romanticized the whole thing. So I have been finding it quite difficult. I work full-time as a hair and makeup artist in television, and I'm on maternity leave at the moment until Basil's 6 months. But for some reason, the week that I was due to give birth, I decided to launch like a side hustle business. So I've kind of been just running with that from the moment he's been born, and I've been finding it really tricky. My partner works from home at the moment with, you know, the pandemic and everything. And so it's been kind of a case of me going, okay, I've got a Zoom now. Can you please have the baby for 20 minutes or that sort of stuff? So it's just a real like hustle. I kind of have felt a little steamrolled a little bit, like a little bit flattened by how much I have to do. And the kids' needs are so different. Like the older kids really need me to engage and chat with them, and he's just so physically demanding. So yeah, I think the thing that I found most difficult is just my brain is just so scrambled so often. And when I sit down to answer emails, it's always like, you know, distracted. I'm like in 5 different places mentally at once. So that has been the real struggle. And there's definitely been moments of like tears and like, what am I doing? But it's just, you just take it day by day. And I think I'm just gripping to the fact that, you know, babies do get easier as they get older and less intensive, and the naps will kind of become more routine and all of that stuff. We're just kind of all over the place at the moment with not much of a routine. So that's quite a struggle. But yeah, that's where I'm at. Hopefully that made some sense. I feel like I rambled a bit.
No,
that was, yeah, no, gosh, kudos to you. Doing something that's of your own too, and like feeling like you want to. I think that's the hardest part is when you love what you do as well. And when you're trying to split those priorities, and there's that primal need to give everything you have to your child. But when you love your work and when you've started something, you don't want to be
so passionate about it and you want it to be amazing. And so, yeah. And then there's the kind of guilt that you're kind of being that mediocre at everything. Does that make sense? Like, I'm not giving my work my all, and I'm not giving my children my all.
Totally.
And I just want to be everything to everyone right now, which is really tricky. I don't have a lot of family support either. So that's always really hard, you know? Yeah, but we're getting there.
You're doing so well.
You look great.
Yeah.
I feel like I just roll out of bed and like get into it nowadays. Like I used to be the girl who did my hair and makeup and like felt really pulled together. Now it's just like, right. Yeah. Just dealing, like going with what God gave me.
Yeah.
One of Ra's friends from kindy said to his friend, said to him, he was like, oh, your mum's the one who comes in her pajamas and her slippers, right? That's your mum. And I'm like, okay, cool. I'm the mum who just goes up to kindy to pick him up.
Yeah, and I'm comfortable. So
yeah, I'm like, yep, that's me. Screeching through the door at 5:30, the last one there. Yeah, it's sometimes I wonder, you know, is it this how much of this pressure to go back to work is comes from ourselves versus how much does it come from society versus how much, obviously there's a financial need for us to go back to work with a lot of families, at least in mine. But it does beg the question around, if there is a partner involved, is there the same expectation for, if there's an equal financial contribution expectation? The interesting conversation I'm having with a lot of people now, is there an equal parenting expectation? And what I found is that there's so often not. And where I think we've really kind of screwed ourselves over in the whole feminism discussion is that equality, we're still kind of striving to this men's ideal of like a man's version of what that is. And I think that, at least for a lot of people who I speak with, a lot of mothers who are working as well, they're still running the entire house. They're still doing all the kid pickups. And if one of the kids gets sick, it's still on them to pick up the kids. So in terms of work, when I was thinking about this discussion as a whole, it's not always just work, for our jobs. It's the other job. It's like, as you said, Rebecca, it's the work of motherhood, all of that invisible labor. It's a job that we don't get paid for.
Yeah. I think that for me too, like I forget that that's work because it's so automatic. And then people will say things sometimes, or I'll have some of my friends who have 3 kids, but also have, really supportive, incredible husbands, and will point out things like that. And it's like, yeah, you forget. because I like what you said about invisible labor. That's such a good way to put it. Just all the in-between shuffling and unexpected, everything really. Everything is so unexpected.
And just that list that you have in the back of your head at all times. We've run out of the bananas or those snacks that he likes for his lunch, and I need to pay the daycare bill, and I need to do the thing. It's all of that on top of the physical doing of the things. It's like there's a whole step before that.
Yeah.
That needs to happen.
When I stayed home with my kids when they were younger, obviously my ex-husband would work, but I took on all of the kid duties. I mean, he's a great dad, but he really didn't do much in terms of like the tickering off the list and getting everything done. And so since we've been separated, now, of course, I have the kids only half the time physically, but mentally, I'm still doing all of the things that they need and making sure that he has all the things that he needs to be able to take care of them when I'm not there. And it's like this other, friends are like, oh, wow, you have a break. And I'm like, but do I? Because I'm still like having to figure out how to make sure that everyone's taken care of all of the time. Because this person, he just has a hard time doing those things. And it's, just part of who he is. So he still needs a lot of support even when I'm not there. And so it's hard to balance it all and figure out like, how do you work? How do you take care of your kids? How do you take care of your co-parent? Like it's a process and it's never ending.
I relate to that. Also, like when they come home from school with stuff, like here's this paper, sign this and do this and submit this by the 17th. It's like little things like that take up space. Yeah.
I've also been like, Oscar will say hi.
Oh my
Hi,
God.
Papa. Oh, nice. Just a casual computer drop. Here's Oscar. Hi. Say hi, honey. Hi. I've been trying to approach that conversation about like, I think he's done. Also, if you can have childcare, like, God bless. I mean, that's the only reason I can do this. Oh, you just spit up right on your shirt. Approaching the conversation about like equitable, division of labor at home is also hard because like he is very helpful and a great dad. And I always want to come at it but I try to explain exactly what you just said, Amy. Like, even if it is, we go through the list and we have our roles and responsibilities, I have the list in the back of my mind of things that are just constantly humming, like I'm always going to have more because I always just have that list of the to-dos for the house, for work. It's just, I don't know what I'm trying to say. Like, even if you have the division of labor really like dialed and locked and you feel like you've sorted that and really tried to be organized and thoughtful about it, but also cool and casual and not type A, I always feel like there's just more in my brain because I'm going to be thinking of all the little things that he's just not going to be thinking about.
Yeah. And I think that, something that I look back at the past 6 months and I'm like, what would I have done differently? Right. So second time round into like second baby, but like first time round with, it's been a nice first baby. Mind you, he came along when Ra was 7 months, and he's just been amazing. Like raised him like his own, like such a wonderful dad, in so many ways. But we hadn't done the newborn phase together. And so when I look back though, and I think, what would I do differently? I truly think that I kind of screwed myself over a little bit in the way that I'm like queen competence, like I'll just do it all. I had a C-section and I was still up, like cooking the dinner, doing all the things, like straight back into work at 6 weeks. So I was like, I can do this. And then, the house was spotless and all of the rest. And I think I like maybe made it look a little too easy. And so what are your experiences with just, taking it all on board? Because you can, and then being like, oh.
Yeah, like they get really comfortable
Yeah.
with that.
And somebody, you know, on the topic of work, bringing this all back, you know, somebody said the other day, I think it was a podcast or a similar conversation to this, and somebody was saying, you know, you've got to give space for other people to help you. And I think that's so important when you are trying to do work as a mother, and also like doing the work as a mother and then working in your other job as a mother. There's sometimes no space to let other people jump in.
For sure. I think also that has a lot to do with letting go. And that's really hard. Like when you said, when you're like, I can do it. I can do it. And then that almost becomes automatic. I know with my ex too, like there were certain things that, like, he was such a heavy sleeper. Like there was no way he was getting up with a baby in the middle of the night, ever. Mm-hmm. And then he traveled all the time. So then at that point, when he was home, it was like easier for me to do it. But I've also thought about this a lot lately with the kids, because it's kind of like enabling in a way where like, it's so much easier to just do shit for your kids, especially when you're like in a rush or you have a million things going on. But taking the time to teach them or like let them do it, which in turn helps you later on, is something that I think is really important in a partnership as well. Because now looking back, I'm like, okay, could have just really like, you know, it would have been hard for me and really probably caused me a lot of anxiety to like let you do this or like watch you do it in a way that I would not have done it. But, you know, that's how you learn. And then that's how you get your breaks. So I don't know. That's something that I think about often, where I'm like, maybe I could have made it easier on myself by
sticking back.
Yeah. Or like sticking it out for 3 days. And then, I don't know. But now, you know, now that we're not together, he's completely had to learn when he has the kids. It's like, and he makes comments all the time still, where he's like, they're a lot. And I'm like, yeah.
Welcome to the party. Yeah. Welcome to the big kids table. Yeah. It's called parenting. What are some other, you know, we're kind of getting to time, but what are some other, I love that idea of stepping back with your kids as well and letting them like figure out how to brush their teeth at a certain age and being like, no, you know, you're capable of putting on your shoes or whatever it is. What are some other things that, I'm directing this to, I think, you, Sam, Yelena, and Rebecca, because you all have older children. What are some things that we can be doing as mothers of young children or not mothers yet to encourage that independence with our kids or make our work balance easier? Like, what has worked for you?
Well, that's a good question.
I love the sticker chat thing. I think that's great. I think.
Wait, what did you say?
I loved the sticker chat. I think that was a really good tip of Rebecca's. Yeah. Anything else like that we can start to do?
Always a sticker chart, but also like make them feel good about being helpers. My son will be 12 next week. And one of the big things I did with him when he was younger was like, he felt proud when he was helping, you know, so like really encourage, like, oh God, thank you so much for picking up the one toy off the ground among the 800 that are there. But like little things like that, where they can like take ownership of what they're doing, and that gives them pride. And I think, especially for my son, that always worked because he wanted to help out and, you know, feel good about helping. My daughter, she's a whole nother beast, and she, you know, she's a lot like me. She just gets everything done, but she also gets to the point where she's like, I just don't want to do that. I'm not going to. And then sometimes I just allow her to also do that. So then when it does feel like it, she does it and doesn't feel forced, you know? So giving them the freedom to kind of choose a little bit and feel proud when they do decide to like be independent is helpful. And always a sticker chart. Like you don't even have to reward them with them. You just like, they like the stickers.
On it.
Jobs. Jobs are important for sure. My kids love to help. So that's a big one.
What about setting boundaries with work? Is that something that anyone can offer anything? This is kind of funny. This is a trick question for you ladies.
Rebecca and I are laughing because we had a conversation yesterday in our company about setting boundaries, but we also had it the day before we launched our company, and like nobody is being boundary today. Like,
I'm sure.
We keep just saying like, what a time to have that conversation.
Yeah, of course. You've launched this incredible product. And you're all, probably no doubt working around the clock, trying to make all the things happen.
I did share on the call though that I'm in Los Angeles and the company's in New York. So I'm used to early mornings. I mean, I don't love them at all. I don't love a 7 a.m. call, but I did, 7 a.m. to 8 a.m. That's like his first feed. I like to breastfeed. Like that is my feeding boundary. And I used to join calls at 7:30 my time and just like, it's off the table minus like all this week. So,
Yeah.
But that's my boundary for sure.
I think I'm getting better at boundaries.
Sam, how do you even have it? Like, how do you have boundaries when you've got 3 kids and you're raising them on your own? Like, what does that look like?
I don't know that I have them really.
Is it possible?
I mean, they help me unload the dishwasher. I'm like trying to think of, I don't know.
I mean, Sam, 1, 3, and 5, you said, I think that like any small wins you can get out of them, like, that's amazing. Empty the dishwasher, like, cool.
I'm not able to be like, hey, I have to do this call right now. Like I've had calls with brands before and Rowan's climbing all over me or like literally screaming. And I'm like in and out the whole time. So they're not at that age where I can be like, hey, I have to do this right now. Or like, I have to record this podcast. And not that that happens all the time, but like it did. And my brother was supposed to come help me and the timing got mixed up or something. And so then she was like, hey, are you ready? And I was like, I mean, sure, but like it might get loud for a second. So
I think one important thing that when I was looking for new work, I've only been at By Heart for a few months, but one of the big things for me was that to find a place, if you have the opportunity and the luxury, that is family first, so that they allow you to create boundaries that you need to be a parent. So like, I know I have to pick my daughter up from school. And so if meetings start to get in the way of that, I have to say like, well, there's really no other option. I'm like a single mom. So like, there's no one else. I have to do it. And so if you're able to find work that can help accommodate that, it makes it a lot easier. And also to just remember that, nothing's permanent. So if it doesn't work out for you, then be strong in your boundaries and make a way for it to work.
Yeah, I'm usually late when I'm submitting stuff for partnerships. And often I'm like, I send an email and I just say, this was it today. I had no one napped and it was 70 degrees outside and we went outside and I couldn't coop them. I don't know. And that's hard too, because then you're like, okay, well, this is my job. This is paying my bills. So I'm taking it seriously, but also that guilt of looking at your kids and being like, well, you really need this right now. So that's such a challenge for me. Especially with everything being, I love social media so much for the connection and artistry and, there's a lot of good stuff on there, but it kind of eats me alive sometimes when I'm like, I always try and think about like, okay, what would it be like growing up if my mom was always had this thing in her hand?
Yeah.
What would that feel like? And sometimes, when I am on my phone or I'm in the middle of something and they're climbing on me or Maddox is trying to like literally hit the phone out of my hand just to be, a toddler boy. But, and I say, I have, this is something I have to do right now. I say that to them. I'll say, if I don't do this, then, I can't go do this fun thing, or I'm not going to be able to, I say, how do you think we buy food? How do you think the lights turn on? How do you think how do you think we have a car? So
Yeah.
I don't know if that qualifies as a boundary, but I do say stuff like that sometimes when moments get really hard.
Yeah. Yeah, of course you do. I think that that kind of puts us onto the topic of guilt, which I don't have a whole lot of time left, but have any of you found ways to combat the ever-present motherhood guilt? This permeates through all aspects of motherhood, not just work. I think that the only thing that has worked for me, or what I kind of return to, is what I mentioned kind of yesterday when I was talking about breastfeeding, was that sometimes I really struggle to, I guess, alleviate the guilt for my own sake. And the only way I can look at it or flip it is, what would I tell my kids? You know, how would I tell my kids to handle the situation? And then usually what I would tell them is probably good advice for myself. So that's something that I found to have worked. What about everybody else?
Oh man. I don't know. I think I wrestle with that a lot, especially with all the changes that Isaac has seen in the last year. And I don't know. I don't think mom guilt is never not going to exist.
Yeah.
But in terms of navigating it, like, I don't know, sometimes I have to do like a perspective check and be like, the things that I feel guilty about are things that we're so fortunate and blessed to have or be doing, or
Yeah.
you know, just even being able to work from home like 3 days a week is like huge. I don't know. So sometimes I just have to think about how I'm thinking about things. But
I think that's
Yeah.
smart. To put things into perspective is really a big thing that can alleviate a lot of guilt. And guilt comes in ebbs and flows. I mean, there's like weeks and months where you're like, I'm the best mom in the whole entire world. And then there's like the next week where you're like, there's no way these kids are going to survive another day. It's just like, it's hard to balance it and make it feel like it's going to work. And if you put it in perspective, you're right. It's kind of an easier way to get through it.
also, everyone, and I think we forget this, but everyone has different limits of everything. Like every mom, just because one mom has like 6 kids and one mom has 1 kid, you know, everyone has different limits of patience and tolerance and things that they can mentally keep up with. So just because you're a mom, you know, it's such a, I don't know, the chemistry is all different for each of us.
Yeah. And that's why it's so important not to compare, because I think it's very easy for all of us, you know, speaking of social media, and it's really easy to look at somebody and say, well, she's got 3 kids, I've only got 1, and she seems to be handling it just fine. And like, why can't I hack it with just 1 kid? And I'm not even going to work and I'm still struggling. And
but yeah, I agree with you. I was just gonna say that because I feel like I remember after I had Isaac and the birth was really difficult, and I remember just being like, how do people do this? And then now I have friends who are like, how do you know, with 3, but it's also like, that's practice.
yeah.
I don't know. Like I've never, even like I had a friend who, I love this. It was right middle of the pandemic and we were all meeting outside, like riding bikes in her neighborhood, and her older son came down and was upset about something or whatever. And he came down and asked her something and then left. And I asked, you know, I said, what's up? And she was like, well, he's upset because of blah, blah, blah. And this is her first, but her kids are older. So she's been a mom for like 12 years, you know? but she told me that she told her son, she's like, I've never done this before. Like, I've never been a mom to you I've never been a mom to a 12-year-old before in this moment. Like, this is new. So I think that's the other thing is like, even if you have, doesn't matter how many kids you have or how many experiences you've had, once you get to that new experience or that new moment, it's like, well, I've never done this before. So this is new too.
Yeah.
Because you have nothing to go off of other than obviously like doing it. And that's the thing. It's just, you have to wake up and do it. But getting to those moments of like, I don't know, that again, yeah, you can't compare because it's always changing. And I think often like once you figure something out that works, then something else changes.
Totally out the window. Then it's like something else that you need to figure out. Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, we actually have another conversation in May about parenting through the ages and talking about that exact thing of what your kids' need changes and how your role as a parent evolves as they grow. So to be continued. But it's been so nice speaking with you, Sam. So nice hearing your perspective and everybody else. Yelena, I'm so impressed that you joined on camera with Sweet Basil.
She's doing the rock.
Yeah. And
He's just starting to lose it. Thanks, guys.
Well, we'll let you go, but thank you for coming. Thanks, Rebecca. Thanks, Kate. Thanks, Vicky. Thanks, Nicola, for joining us.
Nice to see you.
So nice to see you. And I'll hopefully see some of you, not you, Kate. I won't be in LA, but I'll hopefully see you, Rebecca, in New York very soon.
Looking forward to it.
Yeah. All right, ladies.
Guys.
Sam,
you,
we're so excited about your post.